Hey everyone, super excited to chat about the next generation of communication networks, in particular private 5G, a really hot topic globally. Vikram, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining. You're a real expert in this field, so always delighted to chat with someone who has deep technology and know-how in this space. Maybe introduce yourself to the viewers and the team and its mission.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Evan. So let's see. I am at Ecrio, which is a company that's been around for 22 years, a Silicon Valley startup that then grew. So my job is really as Chief Product Officer to make sure that our products are pointed at the trends and in terms of innovation, in terms of where we go with our assets, our expertise. Lo and behold, the private mobile space has emerged big, and we've applied all our assets into that over the last 24 months.
Well, that's fascinating. And 20 plus years is a lifetime in tech terms. So what was the genesis story of Ecrio and how did you evolve into the current market space?
Yeah, so the interesting story. The the scenario was just emerging where 3G was getting launched, and there were a lot of patents and assets that Ecrio had at that time with respect to handwriting recognition, with respect to messaging. This was before the time of IP messaging. We were still stuck in the SMS universe, and so basically, I moved over from Bell Labs. At that time, we were building all kinds of things. I was actually responsible for the UMTS launch in Europe at that time.
Oh,
wow. And so a lot of excitement around, hey, what are we going to do with all this so-called high-speed IP cellular network? We realized that real-time communications was something that was needed. I when I moved to Ecrio, really the real requirement was that we do messaging, voice, and if possible, some video over cellular bearer, and make use of whatever quality of service that was available. So we said, okay, we sort of jumped into the so-called next generation of IP-based SMS, which more recently, after many, many years, has turned into this thing called RCS. And, given that we remained in touch with the good old Bell Labs, they called us in and they said, hey, this is a good time for us to evolve the circuit enterprise services like push-to-talk to IP-based. If you recall, the history of push-to-talk was in public safety and whatnot, all based on circuit technology. Along comes wideband CDMA, as it was called, and so IP-based push-to-talk. So they said, hey, you guys seem to know a lot about how this can be put on devices. At the time, it was a little bit ahead of smartphones. A lot of this embedded software class type of voice and video and messaging. So we created the solution, and as usual, right, Bell Labs. So they were ahead of the game. We got a call from NTT Docomo saying that, hey, we heard you guys are doing something like this. We would like to launch IP-based push-to-talk on our network, which was we were suitably impressed because they were kind of ahead. We had the standardized stacks for what was later on called IMS. So the IMS-based push-to-talk was the first service we launched ahead of anything that's done on US networks. So that was kind of an interesting scenario because this was before Android and before iPhone and whatnot, and the ecosystem of these devices, whether it was Linux or Symbian, you remember all those things, they required, it was almost an art form to fit something of high performance like a live voice value added service like push to talk onto those devices. So we wound up launching something like 50 million devices over 4 or 5 years of that service.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I remember Push to Talk well on the Nextel network back in the day. And
That's
all
right.
these decades later, it's come back to being a killer app again. And
Yes.
particularly, there are a lot of industries, as you know, that are really have challenging environments, obviously
Mhm.
healthcare and oil and gas, defense,
Yeah.
where, low latency, real time communications is super important. So what are the
Yes.
challenges you're trying to solve exactly in those industries, for
Yeah.
example?
So this is interesting. Fast forward another 5 years after that, we basically were called in by the wonderful Verizon AT&Ts of the world because they wanted to launch voice over LTE because it was moving to 4G and kind of on the sort of transition point from 3G to 4G. They wanted to create a 4G ready network for voice calling. So that was a kind of pivot for us. After push to talk, it was VoLTE, and they of course called it voice over CDMA, wideband CDMA, and then moving to VoLTE and so forth. And so what we realized was we had assets that we could really claim were more like a, a protocol stack, Swiss Army knife, so to speak. We could do bidirectional regular voice and video calling. We could do push to
Hmm.
talk using the same session setup. So basically, you hop into the consumer space. It is voice over LTE and now voice over NR for 5G. And jump into the enterprise space. It was all push to talk.
Hmm.
So we decided, hey, why don't we sort of take a look at what people are doing in the industrial verticals? So of course, things like defense and uh, disaster response, other like shipyards and oil and gas. So by that time, we had kind of accumulated, interestingly, partners like Motorola Solutions in the public safety space. And so some of their push to talk was based on our stacks and so forth. And we said, why don't we kind of, move into this area where the same medium of voice could be used to control, machines and control cameras. So essentially, human to machine interface consisting of, speech, triggered commands, and basically you're able to query your machine systems using your voice. So on the edge, a small set of commands that can be recognized in terms of speech recognition is in fact feasible today. And so our next foray into this was, to say we could use this and create, in fact, a server complement to it that could go on the enterprise. So we have an end-to-end solution. We kind of
Hmm.
are able to say, using the solution that we have, including the expertise on the device side, we could have a private network of maybe 10,000 people served with an order of magnitude less cost. And it could be a network on an island. It could be a sort of hosted environment working with hyperscalers like AWS. So this is what we demonstrated at the most recent MWC in Barcelona. The same solution that we had in premises for the defense vertical, operating in the AWS region and serving a shipyard.
Wow, what a fantastic use case. It's amazing to me how many critical industries and even first responders, police, firefighters are using antiquated technologies,
Yeah.
walkie-talkies at scale.
Yeah.
And so you've taken a software approach, right? So you don't make the endpoints, but it's the server, the client, the running in the cloud. Tell us about your solution and how you sort of go to market.
Yeah. So basically, it turns out that there are two avenues for us. One of the avenues, it seems, is just perfect for the defense vertical, where we partner with mission critical hardware OEMs that you can think of as commercial off the shelf, but purpose built for the defense and sort of emergency response and disaster response verticals. So we have a set of hardware partners. So our solution would be kind of pre-integrated with those platforms, and it could be something that the industry calls man-pack, which is basically a backpack-sized core network running our communication software in it, and the devices that have SIM cards that register into that radio of the man-pack. It could be a unit, maybe 1 cubic foot size, that could be deployed on a vehicle, or driven to a sort of theater of action or whatever, and planted there for a period of months. This is also an interesting scenario for the construction. All the sort of infrastructure work that's going on U.S. soil. We are leveraging the fact that CBRS is a unlicensed spectrum that's available, and most of these are 3-year-old sort of engagements at a site. Think of it as a 3-year-old rock concert that's happening. People set it up, and they want the 100 or 300 workers to be able to communicate with each other. They get information from cameras, whether it's security or otherwise. And essentially, it's a 3-year engagement. Once that construction is done, the construction company moves its operations to the next project, and we move along with them.
Yeah, it's an amazing example there. You also talk a lot about resilience and cybersecurity and reliability in communication networks. I know I've seen in Ukraine, for example, how insecure their communication networks are. Everything's being, spoofed and intercepted, and it's quite scary to look at. How do you think about the world of security and encryption and reliability on your networks that you help architect?
Yeah, so tactically speaking, what people leverage is something called spread spectrum for the anti-jamming part of it. It's not something that's supported in the 5G, routinely. So in most cases, I think there is a certain amount of frequency hopping that can be done. We support, 256-bit encryption. So as far as the end-to-end encryption is concerned, that's kind of the new level of security required. But you're right, there is a certain amount of problem with respect to signal jamming if you have sophisticated sort of adversaries. But what we have seen is, this whole thing is designed for this sector, in what's known as communication bubbles. So each communication bubble is powered by what we call communication network in a box. So that has a small cell, and it can basically serve 100, 200, that scale of users. And these bubbles really they have a backhaul through some form of VLO satellite. So this could be Starlink or Star Shield or whatever it is that the sector is going to use. But essentially, the fact that you could actually have these bubbles, and they could act as not just bridging two different sites, but also being able to bridge the sort of the ranking management of that organization to the folks in the field. Also, if there's one of the bubbles that somehow loses power or whatever, they could be hopped over to the adjacent bubble. So those types of overlapping bubbles are kind of the fault tolerance here that is required.
That's amazing. And the beauty of 5G, of course, it's the global standard, and depending on the country, there's spectrum available and supported by the regulators like here in the US. So you must see a lot of opportunity globally, from Dubai to Hong Kong and everywhere in between. Maybe you could talk about where you're deploying your networks these days.
Yeah, so basically, I think what we were showing off in Barcelona this year was a solution that would be for a large shipping company, shipyard company that would be deploying and managing multiple shipyards with the same communication equipment. And there the theme was that if the ship shows up in the port, it almost like has a membership in that shipyard and is able to immediately avail of the services there. It's a bit like driving into a city and having a membership in the city bike program, so you can check out a city bike and away you go and return it wherever you want, and you get a bill. So the scenario that we showed was that the billing, the communication, the ability to sort of activate a set of security cameras to be able to have communication with the personnel at the shipyard, and those things are kind of all part of the membership. The devices are register into the private cellular network, and the cameras are available to essentially rent out access to the cameras that where the ship arrives, and you could be enabling object recognition there. You could be saying, my workers need to have their hard hats on and vests on and so forth, and alerts could be sent to whoever is in the temporary control room, saying that, hey, these guys are not following the safety requirements, and there could be other alerts having to do with intrusion and safety while the ship is in the dock. At the end of its stay, it basically gets a bill and says goodbye.
Oh, what a great use case. That's fascinating. So shifting gears to the DoD side, many of the agencies have been really aggressive about private 5G and deploying networks on ships and in battle spaces and various trials. I'm not sure what you could talk about publicly, but can you talk about some of what you're doing there, what your partners are doing with early deployments?
Yeah, so the scenario is that, of course, you have the CBRS spectrum here in the US. There are some recent announcements of the 3 gigahertz, in shared spectrum manner that could be used. So it could be LTE, it could be 5G. So, we are agnostic to the actual, generation of the radio. I mean, people are getting to the point where they say it's all G, which means, LTE or 5G. And in some cases, it's really dependent upon what devices are available. And you're talking about really ruggedized devices, tablets, smartphones that could be, that have been available for a while, not something that is bleeding edge. And so the announcement that we have with the defense contractor called ADTL, basically involves as I mentioned, the so-called communication network in a box that could be deployed as a single bubble or multiple bubbles using a backhaul. This is something we realized could be useful in theaters where they want to repurpose sort of your usual, SUVs. I think the industry calls it FOSOV or whatever it is. the vehicle that's not like an Hummer. So it doesn't look like a military vehicle, but it could be purposed for communication, installing this type of a box, and could be driven to wherever you want to set it up. And, you could have a coverage of about 3 kilometers around that.
A fantastic use case. So, there's been some criticism around the private 5G market around it's slow to sort of take off. And I always think, well, tech is always slower to reach a certain scale. We just look at AI. We've been talking about AI for half a century, but
yes,
only now have we reached this unbelievable momentum. What do you see the future of private 5G being? Do you see it ubiquitous across industries? And of course, there's alternatives, obviously Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi 7.
That's right.
My personal point of view looks like this is just the killer app for anything that requires real reliability and security.
Yeah.
What say you?
Yeah. So basically, we go, with the requirements, and we like cellular because it has protocols and built-in ways of, quality of service management of video and voice. There are, QCIs and whatnot they're called, that could be managed. We provide the network server piece, which is the IMS and voice and push to talk, that can use these quality of service bearers. So until we have similar types of things in the Wi-Fi domain, you really want to otherwise just reserve certain channels for critical communications and others. Whereas over here, you could have this kind of thing going on. And I think with the 5G doesn't have to be kind of like let's upgrade everything to 5G scenario. In many cases, like I'll give you an example. There is a deployment where you have a shop floor and these cameras. It could be 360 cameras, or it could be multiple cameras at various positions in the shop floor. And you could really use these cameras at where the people in the factory could walk up to the camera and basically say their name, and it starts a video call or a push to talk session with the control room, recognizing who it is. Basically, you could do facial recognition, and so essentially it's like a hands-free, sort of, we call it camera station, where they could start basically it's like, hey, what do I do over here? 3 red lights on the machine on the left. So as far as we are concerned, if it's a video streaming related use case, it's more suited to 5G. If you're really talking about monitoring, so we have this thing called a digital twin engine inside of our solution. So what it does is basically, we want to call it the start of the metaverse. The metaverse has got a bad name, so we call it the metaverse of things as opposed to. So essentially, all the avatars in our metaverse are machines. And so it's easy recognition for somebody who is on a touch screen or on a VR headset to say, okay, I'm now looking at this type of machine. It recognizes what the machine is and where it's located. And if the machine is feeding the system, real-time information, like sensor information, that pops up on that same screen like a dashboard. So you really have a triangulation of, what you're looking at, what the status of the machine is. And this could be something that is viewed by an expert that may not even be on site. They could be basically getting the camera feed and somebody who's over there saying, hey, I don't know what to do here. There's something going on here. They said, okay, let's look at it and let's attend to it. So some of the AI that we've employed are in very, very focused categories. As I mentioned before, sort of voice, spoken voice commands to be able to get status of systems, to be able to even command it to reset and reboot. So voice commands in a group. So essentially, you have these these communication groups, as they're called, in critical communications like push to talk. And you could have a camera that's part of that group, and anybody in that group should be able to say, show me live, and you have the live feed from the camera that is seen. So there are protocols around that in push to talk. They're called mission critical video that could be enabled directly into that. So our contribution there is the object recognition, the speech recognition, some amount of let's call it humble Gen AI to be able to do a little bit of predictive maintenance on those systems. So, like I said, in some of these are long-term systems. Others, they are like I said, at a construction site. So the learning interval is maybe 1 to 3 years. So you could really learn from other projects the same company has, and pre-populate the Gen AI in the system with what happens at other places, saying that, hey, around this time we encountered such and such thing at site number 3, and we are now at site number 8. So maybe time to check a few things.
Fantastic example. Yeah, I had a guest on from Icomera, a train equipment manufacturer for communications, and they actually using the cameras, and for monitoring the lines as they pass through different stations, and using AI to keep an eye on the reliability and availability of those lines, and all kinds of other use cases on trained passengers as well as for passenger safety. So yeah, amazing opportunities. Well, thanks so much for joining. What are you looking forward to over the next few weeks? Any travel, events, or otherwise worth calling out?
Well, yeah. So there's lots of stuff going on. Like I said, we have partners that are in this domain of critical communications for private networks. So there's a critical communications world where there are some very interesting things going on. I think that the whole domain of mission critical communications applied into sort of the public sector and the private sector, because of the private mobile networks is a theme. And everybody wants to hop onto the bandwagon that our communications are critical. Whose communications are not critical in an enterprise? I would say it's like critical at the level of it being a life threat versus a level of being a few $1 million lost to the company.
Yeah, retail, all kinds of industries could use your technology. Well, thanks so much for joining. Really a tremendous insights, and I appreciate your time, and good luck at Critical Communications World.
Okay, Evan. So thanks a lot for having us.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching, everyone, and reach out to Ecrio and any questions you might have. Take care.
Have a nice week. Bye.
Bye-bye.